Good day, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin today in Peru, where the COP20 Climate Change Summit is entering its second week. At the summit in the capital of Lima, representatives of 195 countries are working on a new document to replace the Kyoto Protocol. The delegations have already agreed upon the principles which will be part of the drafted document. The conference is now entering a decisive stage as environmental ministers in charge of the political decisions will review the advances and seal the definitive agreements. The draft will then be presented for approval next year in Paris. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon spoke on the importance of reaching an agreement in Peru.
We must deliver here in Lima a balanced, well-structured, and coherent draft text for the 2015 agreement that provides a clear and solid foundation for negotiations for next year in Paris.
Bolivian President Evo Morales is also in attendance at the conference and spoke on the global threat of climate change.
Climate change threatens not only the prospects for development of developing countries and the achievement of sustainable development, but it also threatens the very existence and the survival of those countries, as well as societies and ecosystems of Mother Earth. We affirm that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the intergovernmental forum, the crucial international forum when it comes to negotiations for climate change.
Meanwhile, while government officials are meeting at the climate change conference, a People's Alternative is also being held. Here's our Peru correspondent, Raul Mora.
The People's Summit, or Cumbre de los Pueblos, is taking place at the same time as the COP20, with participants coming to Lima, Peru from around the world. They will hold general assemblies to come up with an agreement by Tuesday afternoon.
The People's Summit is organized by more than 60 organizations in Peru. We agreed to come together, develop a proposal including all organizations, all ethnicities from Peru, Latin America, and internationally to debate public policies to confront climate change.
One of the first sessions began with singing by a Navajo indigenous representative sent to Peru as a representative of a number of tribes from the United States.
We're bringing the voices together, the women as the defenders of Mother Earth, and us as the indigenous men. We have a responsibility to speak for these issues and to stand up as the warriors of our indigenous peoples. So it's very important, and we have to be principled as warriors.
Thousands of people are expected to keep coming to the country to participate in the People's Summit. They're preparing for a large march on Wednesday as a show of strength of people from around the world coming together to pressure governments into adopting real solutions for global warming. Reporting from Lima, Peru for Telesur, Rael Mora.
We go now to new developments in the case of 43 missing students in Mexico. The Argentinian forensics team working on the case confirms that the DNA of Alexander Mora was found in the samples collected by the Attorney General's office. Parents of the 43 missing students say they do not trust the government, but they do have confidence in the Argentinian forensic results. The parents also say that they have new information suggesting that the 42 remaining students are being moved from different places by Guerreros Unidos gang members. And now with more on the latest evidence in the case, here's our correspondent Clayton Kahn.
Here in this home in the state of Guerrero, the family of Alexander Mora, one of the 43 Ayotzinapa students, received the news that his charred remains had been identified.
They gave me bad news, but whatever. I have to accept it and now wait, supposedly, for the remains to arrive.
The independent Argentine forensics team confirmed through DNA tests conducted on bone fragment and tooth that Mora had been murdered. Upon the announcement, the Guerrero State interim governor expressed solidarity.
The national and state flags will be placed at half-mast for the next 3 days in honor of the student, Alexander Mora, who died because he wanted to be a teacher.
Yet the Argentine forensics team made clear the lack of concrete physical evidence to connect Mora's death to a presumed crime scene where the Attorney General's office declared that all 43 Ayotzinapa students were incinerated. This information keeps hope alive for the families of the remaining 42.
We parents maintain the same position. We demand the students from Ayotzinapa be found alive.
The news of Mora's confirmed death seems that it will do little to reduce the widespread social indignation and calls for justice. Rather, the news seems to provoke greater public outrage. Clayton Khan, Telesur, Mexico City.
Thanks to Clayton. Moving on now to Cuba. The Caribbean countries of the CARICOM regional bloc closed their summit on Monday. During the meetings, the countries discussed their joint cooperation agreements and highlighted the role that Cuba has played in fostering health and technical advancement in the region. The countries agreed to continue deepening integrationist initiatives and also vowed for further unity via the hemisphere-wide CELAC alliance created in 2010. The next CARICOM summit will take place in Antigua and Barbuda in 2017. And we go to Venezuela now, where the victims of violent right-wing protests in February and March of this year are presenting their case to the Organization of American States. The protests, called Guarimbas, resulted in the death of 43 people, the vast majority as a result of violent actions taken by opposition extremists within Venezuela. Most major human rights organizations have remained silent on the abuses that were perpetuated by opposition members earlier this year. Taking a look at international news, we go to the United States, where protests continue over systemic racism in police forces and also impunity. At least 150 protesters were arrested in California on Monday night after holding massive protests in Berkeley. Other cities across the country also saw hundreds take to the streets. Those included Phoenix, New York, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. Last week, the corpse of a second witness in the Michael Brown murder was found in a river in St. Louis. It has sparked suspicion over the circumstances of the death and their links to the case. Another demonstration was also held in the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C. yesterday against the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement. Our correspondent Alexandra Hall was at the protest and filed this report.
It's an important week for one of the biggest trade agreements in history, the controversial Trans-Pacific Partnership. Here at the U.S. Trade Representative Office in Washington, D.C., U.S. government officials and officials from some, if not all, of 11 other Pacific Rim countries are currently in closed-door negotiations about the details of that agreement. Now, while many people have called it NAFTA on steroids, the TPP, only 5 of about 29 of its chapters, is actually about trade. And activists that are rallying around these talks this week tell us that that it puts investors and corporations in a position where they would have the right to sue governments if their policies put into question or possibly threatened their future expected profits. Now, they say that this could harm public health policies. It could put at risk environmental protections, and certain intellectual property provisions could also restrict access to the internet in certain participating countries. Now, we only know all of this because of access to information about the negotiations from entities like WikiLeaks, because as the activists tell us, the TPP text is totally blocked from view from the public, and as President Obama is being put under pressure to put this agreement on the fast track to approval without any congressional oversight, activists all around the United States are calling on him to make that text open to the public as soon as possible. In Washington, I'm Alexandra Hall for Telesur.
Thanks to Alexandra. Staying in the United States, the U.S. Senate will release a report Tuesday on CIA torture practices used by the U.S. government after the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York City. The report is expected to detail the brutal interrogation methods used by the agency to extract information from alleged terror suspects. Its publication was delayed for years as the Senate Intelligence Committee negotiated with the CIA on how much information could be made public. In March, tension between Congress and the CIA arose when it became known that the agency spied on the Senate committee's computers. It is still unknown if the revelations contained in the report will implicate former officials from the Bush administration in the use of torture. As always, we have plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle.